Hey everybody, my name is Tomer and welcome to my D3 tutorial. I'm going to cut straight to the chase. I, like you, have learned a lot of D3 through videos and tutorials online, and I find that while there are some good ones, there isn't a good source to really understand D3 from a basic level, and that most of the videos out there make D3 look more complicated than it really is. So I'm going to try to keep these videos only as long as they need to be. I'll try to cut straight to the chase, but I will explain from scratch how you can get started with D3 in the quickest way possible and with the most solid understanding. So 30 seconds about myself. I first started coding in D3 about 4 years ago. Since then, I worked at Politico for 3 years, and in that capacity, I was the manager of data analytics and strategy there. And yeah, we use D3 as well. So let's jump right in. I'm going to go ahead and use Atom for this demonstration. So here I have the Atom code editor. I'm going to go ahead and drop a raw from scratch HTML file. So go ahead and call that index.html. And then I'll do HTML tab to get the automatic template here that we're used to. I'm going to go ahead and start first by linking D3, and then I'll show you a basic function of D3, which is to select DOM elements, HTML elements, and then manipulate them using D3. So we'll start with just that very basics for this video, and then you can move on to the next videos to work with circles and other SVG elements. Great, so we have this going. I'm going to put D3 visualization on here, and then I'm going to grab the script. You can go to D3's homepage, and they have the link to connect you directly to access the D3 library. Remember to put this at the bottom of the body, because otherwise anything you put here will not be selectable in the script. This is not necessary if you're not putting anything in the body, but that's just good practice in this case. I'm going to go ahead and throw a div on here. Now, how do we style a div? Before we get to D3, how do we style a div by itself? Well, let's take a look. I'm going to go ahead and grab this path to this HTML file and plop it here. Let's take a look with Command Option I in the console here, or sorry, in the developer tools. We see that div that we just created, right? So if I comment that out, the div's gone. If I comment that back in, that's when the div appears. Great, so we know we're connected just fine. Now let's give this attributes. So one way to do that is inline styles. Of course, you don't usually do this, but I'm going to do that for now. Let's give it two things to make it actually appear on the page. We'll give it a height, let's say of 200 pixels, and then we'll give it a background color of, let's say, green. Great. Let's give that a shot. Wonderful. So we have that div, and that appears there just fine. Now, we could also, obviously, we put this in a external CSS style sheet. In this case, let's go ahead and modify that div's attributes using D3. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that and create a separate file, and that'll be my D3 file for now, and it'll be a JavaScript file. D3 is a JavaScript library. And now we need to connect these two files. So you probably already know how to do that. If not, let's go ahead and do that right here. If you do script tab, you'll automatically get the format for how to import a JavaScript file. Remember, this has to come after your importing of D3. Because we're going to use D3 in this file, we need to make sure that we have D3 first, so that when we type D3 here, we know what that is. The code knows what that is. So just like we see up here, I'm going to put a source, the source pointing to the D3 file. So let's go to my D3 file.js. Great. Now a quick way to see if this link actually worked is to create an alert. Great. Looks like that works. Fantastic. So now we can go ahead and write D3 here. So very similarly to jQuery, you're able to select DOM elements using CSS selectors. So CSS selectors are, if you have a dot and then my class name, that refers to a class. A pound sign, a hash sign, that refers to an ID. And then if you just have a name by itself, you're selecting HTML elements of that type. So this might be div, for example. So let's go ahead and select this div that we have on the screen. So D3 is the syntax, dot, select, and then in a string, div. And let's go ahead and give it attributes. So before, what did I do? I gave it a background of green, a background color of green, and a height of 200 pixels. We could do that here using style. So style will apply CSS attributes to that div in the exact same way that I did when I did it inline here. So let's go ahead and do that. So style, we're going to do height. It'll take 2 arguments, just like the pairs in CSS, where you have height, 200 pixels, background color, green. Same idea here. Height, 200 pixels, also a string. And then background color, green. Great. And the div's on the page. Let's give it a go. There it is. Now let's make sure that this has nothing to do with what we just did before. I'll change this to yellow, and that works. And you could add as many styles as you want, as long as they're valid CSS styles. So border 1 pixel solid black, that'll work as well. Great, and you see that they appear here as well. So we're selecting it successfully. Now another cool D3 trick is you're able to do transitions. So in this case, let's say we didn't want all of this to happen instantaneously. Say we wanted to transition in. We could just use .transition, which out of the box will transition what comes after it in whatever way sort of default, like out of the box default ways to do it that obviously you can manipulate in complex ways with D3, but just using .transition alone, it will intelligently try to do it to the best of its ability. So there you can see that the yellow is transitioning in a little bit. If you want to slow it down, you can add after the part that you want to transition, duration in milliseconds, how long you want it to take. So 2000 milliseconds is 2 seconds. So that takes 2 seconds to color in the yellow. And that's something you can do to any of these styles. So let's go ahead and do black. The border. So you see the border is transitioning as well. Let's go ahead and do the height. This is actually kind of cool. So the height's transitioning in. And we can go ahead and, let's make this a little bit bigger so we can see it more easily. We could go ahead and transition all of these. So if we put a transition before each, we'll see that it'll slowly sort of construct the entire div per these specifications. Great, and we can do a duration 20 on each of those. 2000. Awesome. Cool. So that's the basics of how you can select and modify elements on your DOM using D3. And so the next video, I'll demonstrate how you can select multiple elements, as well as how you can create an SVG, which is sort of like a canvas, and append circles and rectangles to that SVG. All right.